They just balance the books. How much money we borrowed, how much money we took out of the taxes through the IRS, and the IRS, as soon as they take their few billions, they will notify the Treasury so that they can reduce it from the national debt. Then they will give more money. So this is keep going and going and going. So what I'm coming to say that since 11 million people accepting $1 million worth of credits, taking it out of the public side and accepting it on their private side and send it to the Treasury Department to reduce the national debt, that's almost $11 trillion by itself. Now some people, they accept for $100 million some stuff, because basically a creditor can decide how much you want to put a value on something that someone is offering you out of your name. We have a lot of successes in this redemption. I get a lot of emails, hundreds of emails, faxes, telephones. A lot of people, they don't even know what they're doing. They're just using some of the instructions in the book. And some people, they're not even winning. They're losing. That's fine. However, it's a vehicle. You have to know how to proceed so that you can succeed. If you don't know how to drive the car, of course you're going to have an accident. Something that I really, when I heard about it, I started laughing. In the American's Bulletin magazine, we ask everyone to send all their success stories to the American Bulletin magazine. One of the stories last month that I was reading, it was really strange. Someone had a dog, and the dog was loose, I guess, and it was running in the streets, and they confiscated the dog. And they called him or sent him a letter saying that we have your dog. If you want to come and pick it up, you have to pay $60 fine. This guy basically, he accepted everything for value. I mean, anything that he has in his household, including the TV, the forks, the knives, everything. He just named them, including the dog. So he goes over there and he says, I'd like to get my dog, and they tell him that, well, you're going to have to pay $60 fine. He says, I don't have the money, but I do have a piece of paper, his UCC1. Now, believe it or not, they read the paper and they says, well, it sounds like either we're going to have to return the dog or we're going to have to pay $1 million check to you. So we'd rather give you the dog. He put a $1 million security interest on the dog. So if you want to get the dog, you have to pay the first creditor first in line, which is him. So that was really neat. Another, I'm going to say this one too because it's really, it's nice to hear. Another doctor, which I think he was involved in labs, and he works with a lot of doctors. He does blood tests. He just called our office, and he says that basically all his creditors, they're forcing him to file bankruptcy. And he wanted to do a UCC process. It was a rush job, so we did it for him. And at the same time, they pushed him to Chapter 11, which is renegotiation. And I guess they didn't accept the terms, so they pushed him to Chapter 7, since he had a lot of assets, and they wanted to sell all his properties to get the money. He submitted to the bankruptcy court his UCC1. Now, 1 week later, I was not in the office. My secretary tells me that so-and-so called, and he was really, he wasn't normal. I says, why, what's wrong? He says that, is this a gimmick, the UCC1? I says, I don't understand what you're talking about. Well, you better talk with this guy. So I called him. I says, what do you mean it's a gimmick? He says, well, the court sent me, after liquidating all my assets, they sent me one check to me, not the creditors. And he says, I don't understand. What is this? Well, I said, obviously, you're the first in line. You're the only person who filed the claim with the Secretary of the State, and you put $100 million against your name. So anything comes out of your name, the first creditor gets paid first. So you're the first before anybody else. So you got the check. So he cashed it. That's good. So the reason why I'm telling you these stories because these are stories that they're unusual. We've got tons of them, but these are unusual stories. Now, in order to explain a little bit more about the UCC, it takes really a lot of time to explain. We do have a book. It's over 430 pages. It explains in details step by step. However, I would like to talk about the way that the natural law is set up, what is the law, and what is the statute, which is very important for you to know. Now, the whole thing is so simple that sometimes we miss it. We know that God created man. So obviously, in our term, we cannot have a claim against our Creator, which is God. Men created a constitution, which is a contract. They made sure that that contract would not backfire to them. So basically, they made sure that the Constitution will create a government, giving them a limited power to serve them, the people. So obviously, the way that it was set up, the government cannot go on top of the people. And government created corporations. Now, today, it's really strange. This is the natural law, and somehow we look to ourselves and we say that, well, the government is above us. What happened? It's impossible. Well, it's very simple. This was planned a long time ago. This is not something that it happened just now. It goes back to 1862. However, it was so cleverly done that all these licenses that people they need it because they're U.S. citizens. They don't need it because they're American citizens. Before the 14th Amendment, no one needed any license to do anything. We started getting licenses. What is a license? It's a permission from someone to do something. Otherwise, it's illegal. Well, to get married, you need a license, I guess, marriage certificate. What's illegal about marriage that you need a permission, otherwise it's illegal? It doesn't make sense. Driver's license. It's illegal to drive on public roads unless you have a permission. It doesn't make sense. And all the licenses, it doesn't make sense. However, you need to have a license as a U.S. person. The whole thing started in 1862. Before coming that, I'm going to just tell you the definition of the law. I'm going to have to read it because it's so difficult. I want you to know about it. Do not injure any humans, person, property, or rights. That's all you have to know about natural law. If you know this one sentence, you're not going to be doing anything against the law, natural law. However, the judge tells you today that ignorance of the law is no excuse. What is talking about? No, we understand this sentence, but what is talking about? The last time that I checked with the Library of Congress, there are over 3 million law books with over 60 million statutes. When the judge tells you that ignorance of the law is no excuse, 80 million statutes, 60 million statutes, I'm supposed to know not to violate one of them? It doesn't make sense. However, the law is very precise, very clear. Not for U.S. citizens, though. That's for American citizens. As a U.S. citizens, you are under all these statutes. Everything applies to you. All the rules, regulations, the licenses, everything. So how we got in this mess to start with? Well, it started when the government, the Congress, the 40th Congress, in 1862, I think it's 1862. Just check on that. I'm sorry, 1868. 1868, they created what is called the 14th Amendment. It was sold to the American people as the end of the slavery for the colored black people. Well, it wasn't black people because it made slavery for everyone. However, once they created the 14th Amendment, now they established the corporate United States, not incorporated yet. 3 years later, Washington, D.C. became incorporated, which is the United States Corporation. Now, so far, American citizens, they're not realizing what's happening. Everything is normal business. So they just start gradually, they start setting up the stage. Then it became 1913, when the Federal Reserve Act passed. Congress lost the power to print a coin, and we gave it to the international bankers. And the excuse was, we're going to take it out of the politicians' hands, we're going to give it to the experts, Rothschild, in the banking business for so many hundreds of years. Okay. Well, when we started borrowing our money, we started paying interest. However, the deal was, we were supposed to pay with gold and silver. They don't want to get it in Federal Reserve notes. 1913 to 1933, there were ships sailing from the West Coast all the way to Europe, full of gold and silver paying interest. By 1933, there was no more gold or silver left. So they had to file a bankruptcy. But who's filing a bankruptcy? The government, Congress. Once the bankruptcy was filed, then obviously the Federal Reserve wanted a collateral to extend credit. At that time, they created, of course, the IRS. They put all the U.S. citizens in the bankruptcy as a collateral for the national debt. So basically your labor from 18 years old till 65, it's pledged to pay the national debt, which is not even yours. It's the government's debt. And that's why they created the IRS.